Hi everybody, this is Kevin. I'm back again with another video, and today I'm here to talk about the history of the library. First thing I would like to mention is Hall's bookstore. This is Lyman Hall. He was a newspaper editor in Ravenna, and he was also one of the people who had a bookstore here in town. And I'm mentioning bookstores because that's all there was before there was a library. If you wanted a book, you had to go out and buy one. And back in the mid-19th century, books were pretty expensive, so this advertisement is from August 24th of 1852, and he's advertising some of the popular books of the time. Here's a companion to Uncle Tom's Cabin. There's some anti-slavery books. So this is all really popular at the time, and I'm just mentioning this because this was pretty much the only way you could get materials if you had to read something. You had to go out and buy it at the bookstore, and there's no bookstore in Ravenna today, but we do have a library now. So this next article is talking about the first library that was actually in Ravenna before the public library. This was called the Ravenna Library Association, and it was what was known as a subscription library, where you would pay an annual fee and then you could check out books and materials from it. And it says there's 4 different points here they are making in this article. They say the association shall, as soon as funds are sufficient, procure a library for the use of its members, shall open a convenient room and furnish the same with a suitable number of newspapers and other periodicals. It may in the winter of each year procure the services of a sufficient number of competent persons to deliver lectures, and it shall hold meetings for the public discussion. So it's kind of the same things that the library does today, except back then you had to subscribe to it. It was kind of like the 19th century Netflix. You just pay for it and then you'd have access to it. So it wasn't open for everybody. The next person I'm going to talk about is Cornelius Reed, and he was born on a farm in Rootstown. He grew up there, and he decided he wanted to become a lawyer. So that's what he did. He got a good education and he went to school, and during his time in school, the Civil War broke out, and he was unable to enlist because of an injured foot he sustained when he was a child. He actually cut his foot with a scythe, and so he was unable to enlist in the regular army. But in 1862, he did actually go down to Cincinnati and became a squirrel hunter, which was what they would call members of the public who weren't in the military, who went down to protect Cincinnati from a possible invasion that never actually occurred. But Cornelius was proud of his military service, and he actually kept his $13 check for the rest of his life without cashing it because it was a good memento for him. After the war, he came back to Ravenna. He set up a law office, and along with his cousin Gustavus Reed, they built an opera house. And this building is still standing on the north side of Main Street. They actually removed the 3rd floor where the actual opera house was, though, in the 1950s. So the 3rd floor is no longer there, but the building still stands. And this became not only the home for famous actors such as Etta Peyton Reed, who's Gustavus's daughter. She became an actress and worked in the theater there before moving to New York. But there's also where they set up the subscription library. So during the 1880s, this was the home of the subscription library, and basically if you wanted to check out books, you'd pay a membership fee and go into this building and get a book. So the next thing that happened was Andrew Carnegie was being a philanthropist and handing out money for libraries across the country. So he actually offered Ravenna half of the cost of the building, and the town trustees would have to pay the other half. And the town trustees were reluctant and eventually declined Carnegie's offer. Kent actually did take him up on the offer, and that's why the Kent Free Library actually began as the Carnegie Library. This is a postcard image of the Carnegie Public Library in Kent. And so this was what Ravenna could have had, and this was 1901 when Carnegie gave Kent its public library. So there were a lot of people who were complaining about the situation in Ravenna. There were a number of articles in the newspaper about how Ravenna needed its own public library. You can go on the library's website and read a couple of those articles. I'm not going to read the whole things to you. But what actually ended up happening was there was a women's club in Ravenna. It was called the Tuesday Club, and they were actually formed of the graduating class of 1900. And these women decided to get together and hold a book shower to establish a free public library in Ravenna. That's what they did on Monday, January 25th, 1915. That library opened to the public, and the original collection contained 750 books. They hired a librarian with a salary of $10 per month, and by the end of the year, the collection contained 2,500 books. And there was still no actual home of the library. They actually moved around town. The first home of the library was this house that's on the screen here. This is the Alcorn House, and this was on the south side of Main Street, right next to the Etna House. You can see actually the wall of the Etna House here, so it gives you the idea of where that was in town. And there's actually a bank here now. But this building was the first home of the Ravenna Library. The Ravenna Public Library is what it was known as at the time, and this was in 1915. And it did change locations a number of times, and that's why they decided to find a permanent home for it. This is another view of Main Street looking east, and on the left side here you can see this was one of the buildings of the Riddle Coach and Hearse plant. That building is still there. That's actually right to the west of the current library building, so our building is right where those trees are. Across the street, this was the Mertz Mansion with this tower here, and there's a parking lot right over here now, so you can kind of see what it is now to get your bearings. And what Cornelius Reed did, he actually decided to offer up half of the cost of the library. It was similar to Carnegie's offer. So he was going to donate $25,000 to purchase a building to be constructed, and Henry Warner Riddle actually offered the site to where it would be constructed. So this is a map. This is Walnut Street in the middle here going up and down, and this is Main Street. So this is the site they chose. It's right to the east of the Riddle Coach and Hearse plant. This land was owned by Henry Warner Riddle, like I said, and Henry Warner Riddle offered to give half of the property site if the public would raise the other half. And so that's what they did. The public chipped in and raised the funds for the rest of that property and the rest of the cost of the building. This was the house that was located on that lot before it was moved by the Riddles. This was owned by the Riddles originally, and that was moved to a new location on Riddle Avenue. But that building is actually what the architect used for styling cues for the new building. They actually had a contest for what the new building would look like, and it was an architecture student from Columbus who won the award for the actual architecture of the building. This is 1923, and it shows Judge Reed on that piece of property there. This house stood to the east for a while, and then later a gas station was built there. So this is showing the surveying of the property and then the breaking ground, leveling out the foundation area. This is the building that they came up with. You can see that same house in the background there. It's kind of a similar angle as the previous photo. And so you can see what they built. This was just a small building, but it did have some of those same styling cues from the house that was there before, such as the second story door and the chimneys on either side. So this opened to the public in 1924, and it remained the public library for a number of years just in that formation. You can see this is a little bit later. This is the 1930s. You can see some ivy growing on the walls. The next thing to happen was in 1956, and this was when Cornelius Reed's daughter chipped in money to build an addition to the rear of the library. And this area here is actually where the upstairs computers are now. This is the 1979 edition. This was also contributed by Cornelius Reed's daughter. And this is the most unique feature of that edition, is the outdoor amphitheater. This is what it looked like inside at the time. You can see this is in the old original part of the building. They had installed a drop ceiling, and they actually walled up the windows a little bit so those windows don't extend to the ground. When we did the 2006 renovation, this was restored to how it was originally, and those full windows were added back and the tall ceiling was added. This was the Jenkins building. This was the old gas station. It was converted for a while into a meeting room in the 1980s. And so basically, if you wanted to use the meeting room, you'd have to go across Walnut Street and unlock it and get in there. It was rather inconvenient because it wasn't attached to the main building. So in 2006, what they did was they actually added on a major renovation. This was 2004 to 2006 when construction occurred. And basically the whole east side of the building, as you know it today, was added on at that time. This is a color photo, or color floor plan rather, that I actually put in the color here so you can see the different additions to how it is today. So this is the second floor. This is this green area. This is the original building, and this is where our adult fiction collection is today. This light blue color is the upstairs computer lab, and as well as the adult computers, and it stops kind of where the copier room is there. There's a couple pillars, and this is where the reference desk is now. So this edition here is the 1979 edition. It's kind of this reddish pink color. Originally this was the back wall of the building at that time, and then behind here is where the outdoor amphitheater was. So you can see the rest of this building, everything in tan, is the 2006 edition, and this was the major edition really because it more than tripled the original size of the original building. So this is, you can see the parking lot would be in the back here, and this is Main Street. The last thing I want to show you guys, this is kind of an overview of how the roads used to look and how it looks today, so you can see everything that's been added on. So you can see toward the bottom here where my mouse is, this is the original 1924 building. This is that building that's to the west of it. This is the one building that was part of the Riddle, Coach, and Hearst plant that's still there. But the most major addition you can see was the blocking up of Walnut Street when they built the 2006 edition. So you can see Walnut Street used to go north and south right through where the children's desk is today. And everything that's over here is later additions. Also, our parking lot in the back here, you can see this is a whole city block. There were actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses here that were taken down to construct our 100-car parking lot. You can see this building is still here, this house is still here, and then these 3 buildings along the west side of Walnut Street are still there. But it's changed a lot over the years, and it's hard to say where we'll go in the future, but this is just amazing to see the changes that have happened in the last 100 years. So if you have any questions about this, you can check out our website. There's more details about the history of the library on our website, and you can also leave questions in the comments. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.